till I just went and listened to ICEMAN, and I listened to Little Birdie, and then I went back and listened to the intro of my first album. Twin. That's the only beat I've ever produced and sat there and produced. Don't rip my shit and repitch it like that, fam. Boy, it feel too good. Top 10 all time. It's me. I'm talking about we here. Like my favorite that I never heard before, but like the first, I ain't gonna lie, Cuz here, Baby Milk. I first heard this shit on his On the Radar shit. Overgas. Oh God.
Drake allegedly took 1900 Rugrat song Situation and turned it into a major headline. The claim is wild too. People are saying the beat came from a track Rugrat produced himself, and according to Rugrat's side, it was the one beat Drake's camp was told they could not use. Then that same sound reportedly showed up on a huge album release like nobody would catch it. Now 1900Rugrat has stepped out and spoken on it publicly, and people are waiting to see if Drake responds. You gotta understand something before going deeper into this story. This is not being framed like some regular industry disagreement over credits or business paperwork. This is a 21-year-old artist from Limestone Creek, Florida, a tiny place with barely more than 1,000 people living there. Finally getting his moment, finally getting noticed, and finally receiving support from one of the biggest names in music. Then things allegedly took a sharp turn when he felt a song he said no to still found its way into the conversation. That's where people started looking at this situation differently. And this is where the noise gets even louder. Some fans online instantly started bringing up older conversations and past accusations involving Drake and smaller artists. Over the years, people have pointed to claims involving flows, sounds, lyrics, and creative ideas being similar across songs and artists. Accusations talked about it. Meek Mill pushed his own claims. The Weeknd had his own comments brought back into discussions. Future reference tracks made rounds online. Lil Yachty's name popped up in debates too. None of these situations are exactly the same, but people started connecting dots fast. Now here comes another twist. Drake dropped an album that many people saw as a major moment, after all the Kendrick Lamar chaos and non-stop talk around his career. Then almost right out the gate, a rising Florida artist jumps on Instagram and basically says, "That's my shit." That line had social media moving crazy. But before getting into what Drake allegedly did, people need to understand who 1900Rugrat really is, because his story hits different.
So I sent 10 songs through, and they was all finna be on my album because I didn't want nobody to steal my shit because I know how people move. So boom, the one they took a liking to was the intro. Now the intro still dropped. I said, no, you can't have this song. He wanted me on his album still. He said, I'm gonna send you a verse through. Never sent the verse. I didn't give a fuck till I just went and listened to ICEMAN, and I listened to Little Birdie, and then I went back and listened to the intro of my first album. Twin. That's the only beat I've ever produced and sat there and produced. Don't rip my shit and repitch it like that, fam. That's fried. That's fried out and fucked up.
Miles Spiel was born August 8th, 2003, and came from Limestone Creek, Florida, a small area in Palm Beach County with barely over 1,000 people around. The place is so tiny that one of its biggest known spots is a nature preserve. His life story was already heavy from the start. He never knew his biological parents and was adopted when he was only 2 weeks old. Then things reportedly got rough when he was around 14 and had to leave home. He ended up staying with his friend Rick from DeCreek's family, the same Rick people may recognize from his music. Rugrat later started rapping after hearing another student spit bars and thinking he could do it better. That's one of those classic come-up stories right there. He was never out here chasing fame like that. He was just being himself, the funny dude in class, the loud personality, the kid people looked at and underestimated. While everybody else was making assumptions, he was putting in work behind the scenes. For years, he was grinding with almost nobody paying attention. He worked jobs at Walmart and Tijuana Flats, and keeping a job for long stretches wasn't easy for him. He was recording tracks in his friend's room using a Turtle Beach gaming headset and a computer setup that was super basic. No fancy studio, no crazy budget, just straight hustle. His sound was shaped by artists like Chief Keef, Kodak Black, YNW Melly, XXXTentacion, and a lot of Florida and drill influences that stayed in his ears non-stop. He kept dropping freestyles on SoundCloud for years, but the numbers barely moved. Then September 2024 hit and everything flipped upside down. He dropped One Take Freestyle, and that track started going wild. Within weeks, it climbed all the way to the #1 spot on Spotify's US viral chart. Suddenly, people who never looked his way before started paying attention. Labels started calling, deals started showing up, and he signed with Remain Solid and 300 Entertainment. Just like that, the jump was massive. 1 minute he was on a porch in Limestone Creek, and now he was looking at a whole different world. Straight up come-up energy. That story even inspired the title of his debut project, Porch to the Pent, which dropped on February 28, 2025. Then the support started pouring in. Heavy Kodak Black showed love. Lil Yachty posted him. Lil Uzi Vert posted him too. Bossman Dlo brought him on tour. He hit stages at Rolling Loud Miami and Rolling Loud California. Big media names started paying attention too. The New York Times talked about his style being fully developed, and the Fader put him on their artists to watch list. Then came the moment that pushed things to another level. Drake himself reposted him. Right after Kendrick Lamar made huge waves at the Grammys with Not Like Us in February 2025, Drake was overseas on tour in Australia. He posted an Instagram reel showing himself on stage wearing a hoodie with fake bullet holes, smoke effects going crazy, and in the background was a bass-heavy remix of 1900Rugrat's one-take freestyle. Rugrat later talked about how shocked he was and said, "Babe, Drake posted me." The moment hit him hard. To a 21-year-old artist coming from a place with barely over 1,000 people around, getting that kind of support from one of the biggest names in music can feel life-changing. But then the mood around the story shifted. After hearing Drake's newer music, Rugrat felt like something sounded too close for comfort. And now the story takes another turn. Before the reposts, before the Grammy headlines, before everything started exploding online, Drake's team had reportedly already connected with 1900Rugrat. And according to the story being told, it wasn't just about giving compliments. People say the conversations were also about getting access to music. According to 1900Rugrat's own Instagram video, this story goes back way before ICEMAN ever dropped. He said around a year and a half earlier, one of Drake's producers reportedly reached out asking to hear unreleased music. And think about that for a second. This wasn't some random fan message sliding into the inbox. This wasn't somebody throwing out blind requests, hoping for a response. According to Rugrat, a producer connected to Drake's circle directly contacted a Florida artist who was still mostly unknown at the time and wanted to hear what he had cooking. Rugrat said he sent over 10 unreleased songs, 10 records that, according to him, were meant for his own future project. But he also made it clear that he was moving carefully from the start. He said he already understood how parts of the music business can work and wanted to protect himself. In his own words, he said, "I didn't want nobody to steal my shit, and I know how people move." That detail matters because he explained that he wasn't just sending music around without thinking about it. According to Rugrat, Drake's team listened through all 10 songs, and one track reportedly stood out more than the rest. The song they focused on was the intro track, the same one that would later open Porch to the Pent. Rugrat explained it directly, saying, "The one they took a liking to was the intro." Then he says he shut it down immediately. "I said, no, you can't have this song." Straight up, no confusion, no mixed message, just a clear answer. So he kept the track for himself and later released it as the opening record on his debut project, Porch to the Pent, which dropped February 28, 2025. What makes this stand out even more is what Rugrat said about the beat itself. According to him, this wasn't just another beat picked from somewhere else. He said it was personal because it was the only beat he had produced completely on his own from the ground up. That made it hit different for him. Then fast forward to May 15th, 2026, and things take another turn. Drake drops a massive release all at once. ICEMAN, Birdie, and Maid of Honor all arrive together with 43 songs total. The rollout was huge. During the 4th ICEMAN livestream installment, Drake pulled out 3 hard drives on camera, and people online went crazy. Social media started moving fast because many fans saw it as one of his biggest releases in years, and a major career moment after all the Kendrick Lamar conversations that had been hanging around. Everybody rushed to hear the music, and according to Rugrat's story, he was listening too. He gets to track 15 on ICEMAN, a song called Little Birdie, and he says something instantly caught his attention. He went back and played the intro from Porch to the Pent. Then he listened to Little Birdie again, and again, and again. That's when he posted the video that had people talking everywhere. He said, "Twin, that's the only beat I ever produced and sat there and made myself. Don't rip my shit and repitch it like that." That line hit social media hard. According to Rugrat, this wasn't just any instrumental sitting in a folder. He says it was his own creation built from scratch, and he believed it sounded too close to what later appeared on Little Birdie. People also quickly started looking at the listed credits and discussing them online. Then the conversation exploded fast. The second that video landed, social media and hip-hop spaces started buzzing immediately. Once that video dropped, music spaces online went into full discussion mode. Forums started moving fast. Reddit threads were showing up within hours. Comments under ICEMAN reviews started filling with one repeated claim. Little Birdie was written by 1900Rugrat and used without his permission. Fan pages started posting side-by-side clips comparing the songs. YouTube breakdown videos started appearing. TikTok feeds started running with it non-stop. The conversation spread crazy fast. And this is where things started feeling bigger to people online. Supporters argued this wasn't being presented as some random artist jumping into the spotlight during a major album release. According to Rugrat's version of events, he had a timeline he believed supported his claim. He spoke about prior communication with people connected to Drake's production side, and he had already released his own song months before ICEMAN arrived. So fans started laying out dates and trying to connect everything for themselves. The timeline people were discussing looked like this. Rugrat says he created the beat himself. According to his account, Drake's camp later expressed interest in it. He says he turned down the request. His own song then dropped on February 28, 2025, as part of Porch to the Pent. Later, Little Birdie appeared on ICEMAN on May 15, 2026. That sequence became a huge talking point online because people started stacking the events next to each other and saying, "Wait a minute?" Then the discussion got even bigger because some fans started bringing up older Drake controversies and past debates from years ago. Suddenly, this wasn't just being talked about as a one-on-one disagreement anymore. People started saying they had seen similar conversations happen before and began revisiting older moments from hip-hop history. One name that instantly came back into the conversation was XXXTentacion. And that connection grabbed attention because 1900Rugrat is also a Florida artist who grew up in that same South Florida world. Rugrat had even talked before about looking up to artists from that scene. He told Billboard that he was still a freshman in high school, back when Murder on My Mind was only buzzing on SoundCloud. He watched that whole Florida wave take over, and also saw the debates that surrounded XXXTentacion during his rise. Now this is where people started making comparisons. Back in January 2017, Drake was on the Boy Meets World Tour in Amsterdam and previewed a song from his More Life project called KMT with UK rapper Giggs. A recording from the show ended up online, and almost immediately fans started reacting. At that time, Look at Me had already become one of the biggest SoundCloud songs around. XXXTentacion was in jail in Broward County at the time, which is in the same South Florida area connected to Rugrat's world. Then listeners started pointing out similarities between Drake's flow on KMT and the cadence many people associated with X on Look at Me. That conversation got loud very quickly. People around X also spoke publicly. His manager at the time, Adam22, discussed the situation and said there were different possibilities, but many people were focused on the similarities. Danny Towers also commented and said, "And keep it real, I felt it was kind of ridiculous to say that you've never heard of him." Then X himself made a statement from jail to XXL that people later brought back into the spotlight. He said, "If Drake is going to take the flow, at least reach out to Ahaya. Help Ahaya out in this situation." That quote started getting pulled back into current discussions because some fans felt the energy sounded familiar. People online began comparing it to Rugrat's situation and saying the feeling being described was similar. The argument many were making was basically this: if communication already happened before, why are similar questions showing up again? That's where the debate really started getting louder. With the XXXTentacion situation, the debate was mostly centered around flow and cadence. Those conversations can get messy because style, delivery, and rhythm are harder to define in a legal sense, even when fans strongly feel similarities are there. But supporters of Rugrat's claim are arguing something different here. According to the allegations, this conversation is about an actual beat and production elements, which many people see as a more direct creative component. That's why some fans believe this situation carries a different kind of weight. Back during the X situation, Drake publicly pushed back on the accusations. During an interview on BBC Radio 1 Extra, he said he didn't know what people were referring to and denied the claims being made. The story eventually settled into becoming part of the larger narrative around X's rise. At the time, X was young, dealing with legal issues, and the conversation moved on without becoming a larger industry battle. Some people later argued that the attention even increased X's visibility, while others felt questions around the situation never fully disappeared. Now people online are asking another question. Are fans watching similar conversations happen again, or is this a completely different situation? That's where people started zooming out and looking at the bigger picture. Back in June 2015, Meek Mill kicked off one of the biggest discussions hip-hop had seen in years. He posted tweets accusing Drake of not writing all of his own lyrics. That instantly set the internet on fire. Soon after, reference tracks surfaced involving Atlanta artist Quentin Miller. People started hearing recordings where lyrics, deliveries, and rhythms sounded very close to what later appeared on Drake records. Songs like 10 Bands, Know Yourself, and others became major talking points because listeners noticed similarities between the reference recordings and the finished versions. Drake's team described Quentin Miller as a collaborator rather than a ghostwriter, but fans kept debating where the line really sat. Then another layer entered the conversation. NPR discussed something many hip-hop fans felt was important. In rap, it isn't always just about words written on a page. The delivery matters too. The cadence, the rhythm, the emotion, and the way a verse sounds all play a huge role. So if a reference track already includes those elements, people started asking where the line between collaboration and something more involved begins. That debate never fully went away and still gets brought up today. And that wasn't the end of it either. The Weeknd later shared details about his early work with Drake during an interview with Rolling Stone in 2015. He explained that some songs used during Take Care originally came from music he had created during the House of Balloons era. In his own words, he said, "I gave up almost half my album." At the time, he talked about appreciating the exposure and opportunities that came with it. But years later, after things between him and Drake reportedly cooled off, another quote grabbed people's attention. He said, "I thank God that I never signed my life away." That line instantly had people talking because fans started reading deeper meaning into it. Then more names started getting thrown into online discussions. Future reference tracks later resurfaced during the 2024 rap conversations. Vori's name got mentioned. Lil Yachty started becoming part of online debates too. Rick Ross even jumped into things and posted a clip with the caption, "Yachty aka The Pen." That post spread everywhere. Fans took it as another suggestion tied to the bigger discussion around writing and collaboration in Drake's music world. So when 1900Rugrat stepped in front of the camera and claimed Drake used his beat after already being told no, fans immediately connected it to a much bigger conversation. For a lot of people online, this didn't feel like a random moment appearing out of nowhere. They started linking it to years of previous debates and discussions that have followed Drake's career for a long time. That's why people kept saying this situation felt different. To them, it wasn't being viewed as one isolated incident. It was being talked about like another chapter in an ongoing story. Then the timing made the situation hit even harder. ICEMAN was being viewed by many people as a huge moment for Drake. After the massive Kendrick Lamar battle and everything that followed, there had already been non-stop discussion around his career. Not Like Us became one of the biggest records in the world and turned into a major cultural moment. The song picked up huge recognition and sparked conversations that stretched far beyond rap itself. So by the time Drake returned with new music, attention was already locked in heavy. Drake answered with a rollout that was impossible to ignore. 3 projects dropping at the same time, 43 songs, live streams, visuals, big moments designed to grab attention everywhere. Fans saw hard drives pulled out on camera and social media started going wild. The ICEMAN era looked like it was supposed to be a giant statement saying the spotlight was still his. The idea many people were talking about was simple. No matter what happened before, Drake was showing that he was still standing and still operating at a huge level. That was the energy surrounding the release. Then things suddenly shifted. Within hours of people diving into the music, one of the biggest conversations wasn't centered around lyrics aimed at Kendrick, LeBron James, or DJ Khaled. Instead, social media started flooding with discussions around 1900Rugrat's claims. Suddenly, a rising artist was on Instagram saying, "You stole my intro and I told you you couldn't have it." That instantly pulled attention away from everything else and sent people into detective mode. Now look at the situation through Rugrat's perspective for a second. According to the story being told, Drake had shown support before. He reposted his music. He gave him visibility during a huge public moment. To a young artist still building his career, that kind of recognition can feel massive. So when Rugrat later came out with these allegations, supporters online started saying that's why the emotions behind it felt stronger. People began describing it as more than just a conversation over business paperwork or song credits. The feeling being expressed by many fans was centered around trust and expectations. If someone gives support publicly, and then later a disagreement appears, emotions can get involved quickly. That's why people started reacting so strongly. Now here comes the part everybody is watching closely. At the time this script is being recorded, Drake has not publicly responded to Rugrat's allegations. No Instagram post, no tweet, no interview comments, nothing official. And people online immediately started debating what could happen next. Some believe he could deny the claims completely. Others think credits could be updated if any changes become necessary. Some believe discussions could happen privately behind closed doors if legal teams become involved. Others think he could simply stay quiet and let attention move elsewhere. But fans also point out something important. The internet now moves differently compared to years ago. Clips get saved instantly, screenshots stay around, side-by-side comparisons spread across every platform in minutes. Once people start building timelines and posting receipts, those discussions can continue for a long time. One thing that does stand out is how direct Rugrat sounded in his own statement. He wasn't presenting his thoughts like a question, or saying he only thought something sounded close. He spoke with confidence and said, "That's the only beat I ever produced and sat there and made myself. Don't rip my shit and repitch it like that." That wasn't framed as uncertainty. That landed like a statement people immediately paid attention to. That statement came off like somebody who knows exactly what their own creation sounds like and isn't leaving much room for confusion. And supporters of 1900Rugrat quickly pointed out something they believe separates this situation from some past controversies. They say Rugrat already has things working in his favor that other artists in similar conversations may not have had. His fan base has been growing fast and getting louder. He has label support behind him. And in the Florida rap scene, many people connect his name with being straightforward and keeping things real. Fans see him as someone who built his image around being himself, staying unfiltered, and not switching up for attention. Because of that reputation, many supporters instantly felt like his claims deserved serious attention. People online also argued that making up a story like this would clash with the image Rugrat has spent time building. To them, his entire rise has been connected to authenticity and showing people the raw version of himself. That's why supporters immediately locked in and started backing him. But when you zoom out, this discussion starts becoming bigger than Drake and bigger than 1900Rugrat. It turns into a conversation that hip-hop has been having for years about power and influence inside the music industry. When you're one of the biggest names in music, there's naturally a lot of pull around you. Smaller artists want opportunities. They send songs. They share unreleased records. They want feedback, support, reposts, and chances that could completely change their careers. For many artists, getting recognition from a superstar can feel like hitting the jackpot. But people have also questioned whether those relationships always stay balanced. Fans have debated for years whether younger artists sometimes end up losing ownership over ideas, sounds, or opportunities while trying to move forward in the industry. Those conversations are not new at all. What has changed is the speed of the internet and how fast information travels now. Things can be documented immediately. Messages get saved, videos get clipped. Fans build timelines in real time and start comparing details instantly. Once conversations begin online, they can grow into huge stories almost overnight. People also started comparing Rugrat's situation to XXXTentacion again because they see major differences in where both artists stood during their moments. Back in 2017, X was dealing with legal issues. and had different challenges around him. Fans still kept discussing the comparisons, but many felt there were limits on how far things could realistically go at the time. Supporters of Rugrat argue that his position now looks different. They point to label backing, communication records he says exist, a growing audience, and his own public statements as reasons why they think this situation carries more weight. Then another conversation starts showing up. Drake's image for years has often been tied to personal storytelling, emotional records, and music that feels close to real-life experiences. Because of that, critics argue that whenever questions about writing, influence, or creative ideas appear, they can affect how parts of the audience view him. Maybe not enough to completely change everything, but enough to keep adding new layers to the discussion. And now things circle back to the moment that has people talking the most. On the album, many fans viewed as a major reputation reset moment. One of the most discussed tracks out of all 43 songs is now sitting in the middle of a controversy tied to a 21-year-old artist from Limestone Creek, Florida. According to Rugrat's side of the story, he never planned on becoming part of a situation this big. He was focused on his own music and his own journey, and now his name is suddenly attached to one of the biggest conversations surrounding the release. For many people online, the details Rugrat described in his Instagram video are the reason this story grabbed so much attention. The reported communication, the specific song being discussed, the claim that he said no, and the later allegations that followed all became major talking points. Supporters began arguing that situations involving major artists and rising artists naturally bring questions about influence, power, and how decisions get made behind the scenes. Then another layer gets added because of where Drake's career stands right now. People have been watching closely after the huge Kendrick Lamar discussions and all the headlines that followed. Fans have debated his legacy, his place in the culture, and where he moves next from here. So now, instead of the focus staying completely on ICEMAN, another conversation has entered the spotlight. Rather than people talking only about the rollout, the live streams, or the music itself, social media is now packed with discussions around 1900Rugrat's claims. And people are waiting to see if Drake says anything publicly or if the story continues building on its own. How Drake responds, if he responds at all, could become a huge part of the conversation moving forward. Because moments like this can shape how audiences view artists, especially when fans are already paying attention to every move. Drop a comment below. Do you think the similarities people are discussing point towards something bigger? Or do you think this is all being read into too deeply? Have you listened to both songs side by side yet? Once you hear them back to back, people start forming their own opinions fast. And if you've been following these conversations across the years, hit that like button and jump into the discussion.